Oh, this is gonna be crazy.
Okay, destroy the building.
Alright, so hello everyone and welcome today to another episode of The Verdict. I am SpraynPray1000. Let me turn this different direction. And today we are going to talk about Battlefield Hardline, the latest in the long-running Battlefield line of games. And the first real infantry-focused Battlefield game, I want to say, in quite some time, if at all. And let's hop right in. So Battlefield Hardline, rather than focus on a military-style setting, as done with, most Battlefield games like Bad Company, Battlefield 3 and 4, Battlefield Vietnam, and all those other games, Battlefield 2142, Battlefield Hardline focuses more on a domestic, a U.S. cops and robbers style game, mainly focusing in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, as the two prime settings for the game, although there are a couple of exceptions here and there. And for the most part, the game tries to deliver a more infantry-focused style of gameplay. And sure, while there are vehicles, there aren't the typical tanks, lightly armored vehicles, AC-130s or anything like that in the multiplayer component of this game. And I guess I might as well start off with the multiplayer component first. Your standard four classes that I think have been around since Battlefield 3, they've been around since Battlefield 4, but, they've been around for a while, like Bad Company and before that. But your standard four classes return. They've been slightly renamed, because they're not exactly the same as their military counterparts. You have Operator, which plays very similar to the Assault. It's more of the Assault Medic from Battlefield 3 and 4. You have Mechanic, which is very similar to Engineer. You have Enforcer, which is your support. And you, last but not least, have your Professional, which is very similar to Recon. So, generally speaking, the style of this game really harkens, I want to say, more so back to Battlefield 3 as opposed to Battlefield 4. In Battlefield 4, you could do a lot of different diversity with your classes. For example, you could be playing support, but you could put on a DMR, which is more of a sniper-based thing. You could be playing assault, and you could be using a carbine, which is, typically an engineer-style weapon. But Battlefield Hardline tries to re-implement the Battlefield 3 system in a number of different ways, some of which are alright, some of which are a little eh. And first off, they kind of bind you to what's within your class. So, for example, assault players can only use carbines and assault rifles as their primary weapon. They can't, say, use a DMR or use a shotgun. Enforcer can only use battle rifles and shotguns. Mechanics can only use, what are they called? I think personal defense weapons or submachine guns. They're basically your close range rapid fire guns. And snipers can only use DMRs and sniper rifles. So there's really little diversity to be had there. On the flip side, however, they bring back the whole certain faction-based weapons. Although, unlike in Battlefield 3, the faction-based system actually doesn't function the same way where all you have to do is get mastery with the class and you unlock all the other side weapons. No, in this game you have to get 1,250 kills in order to unlock the weapon license, which then allows you to use it for any faction. I know weapon licenses can be purchased for 50 grand. And by the way, this game uses a money currency similar to, I want to say, Black Ops 1 with the whole COD points currency. Which actually I do like that a lot better than the standard kind of way of unlocking stuff. Similar to what I said about Black Ops, but anyway, that is probably the one thing I will say about the whole faction-based thing that can get kind of annoying, because 1,250 kills is actually quite a hefty amount. I would have said something more like maybe 1,000 is where you get the gold plating, but maybe something more along the lines of 750. Or maybe just like flat 500 might have been a bit better, because it's certainly a gating requirement for a lot of lesser players to try and get to that, and they probably will not get to that now. I myself have unlocked 1, and I'm already fast on the way to unlock numbers 2 and halfway to number 3. And I think I have another one floating around that's somewhere. But it is quite a lot of work. It takes a significant amount of time to unlock a weapon license in this game. And while it is rewarding because you get to use your favorite gun, to be honest, I kind of miss the Battlefield 3 system, and even better, the Battlefield 4 system of just simply not having split stuff, or simply not having it be this difficult. Now, having each class focus on a certain amount, a certain type of weapon, and a certain focus, I actually do like in a very different aspect, because it means that you don't have people screwing around with weapons that they're probably not going to need to use when they're in a certain situation. So, for example, Assault really should not have sniper rifles or DMRs that do high amounts of damage. Just the fact that they have assault rifles is already ridiculous enough. They don't need to hose you down with 30 points of health a shot while standing on top of their med kit. That gets kind of ridiculous. Likewise, Engineers do not need to have shotguns when they already have a completely different aspect to that. So I can kind of see what they're going for with that, and I kind of actually like that a bit better. Especially in this game, Engineers have something called Armored Insert, which basically reduces the amount of damage they take, I believe, to the chest and stuff. They really don't need to be eating up damage while, you shoot them with a shotgun. I can kind of see the logic behind that. So that I actually do like. The multiplayer, what I will say about it is I do like the maps. The maps in the multiplayer are pretty good. The thing I don't like about the maps is that they're not all made for all the different game types. So, for example, some maps are really, really good in certain game modes, and other maps are just generally terrible. Typically, I think there's like 3 or so maps for Team Deathmatch that are really not that good, because basically the maps are a circle, and it's very easy for, 2 people who are on opposite teams to spawn real close. Also doesn't really help that the spawning algorithm kind of gets a little scrambled. Well, a little is an understatement. Can really get scrambled on those maps, and that leads to a ton of spawn killing. It leads to a lot of annoyances with the gameplay. And while one thing I will say is they have addressed it and they will fix it, but at the time of review, it is still pretty busted and it's still not right. But besides that, I will say what the game modes that this game does include are typical Conquest Small, Conquest Large, which has which is I think like 7 or so conquest points, as opposed to Small, which only has 3. Team Deathmatch, which has been a staple since I believe Battlefield 3. Heist, which is basically the robbers have to break into a vault and steal 2 bags of money and get it to the extraction points within a certain amount of spawns, while the cops, who have infinite respawns, try to stop them, and they can return the bags back to the vault, and they can halt them at any corner they see. That's a pretty interesting mode. I think it's kind of like the replacement for Rush, which I find to be very weird. There's also Hotwire, which is kind of like Conquest, except the capture points, rather than being conquest points, flags that are very stable, are actually vehicles. And by driving the vehicles around at a certain speed, you actually capture the vehicles and you begin to, drain tickets and gain points for your team. And that is actually one of the more interesting and unique game modes I think I've seen in a while, considering it's such a small variation on Conquest, which I think is a very bland and boring game mode at points. Hotwire is actually really interesting and really fun to play, especially if you have a group of friends. There's also Blood Money, which is more like point control. Essentially, there's a time limit. There's a pile of money somewhere on the map, and the teams fight to grab as much money as they can from that pile and bring it back to their vault. You can steal money from the other team's vault and place it in your own. And basically, upon reaching a certain amount, I think the amount is like 150 points, or a certain time limit, which I think is like 20 or 30 minutes, whoever has the more money wins. So I like that game mode a little bit. I like Heist and Blood Money about the same. I like them because they're different, they're innovative. And then there's 2 different, more search and destroy type game modes. I forget the one. Crossfire, which is where a drug lord is squealed to save his skin, and the criminals have to kill him while the cops have to defend him, and it's 5-on-5, quick matches. And then I believe the other one is hostage negotiation or something like that. Basically, the cops have to go in and rescue a criminal, or excuse me, rescue hostages while the criminals have to stop them. Typical, more kind of similar to Counter-Strike modes, like Counter-Strike mods and with Crossfire, and hostage is obviously more similar to the standard hostage rescue from Counter-Strike. Those two I like, although I feel that the thing is they could probably be done on a bit bigger scale. I don't like the idea that the cop or the VIP, if they go down, is that's just the end of the round. I think that they would be better suited doing a more Gears of War style execution, or what was that mode in Gears of War? Capture the Leader or something. I don't remember what it was called. Where they have to keep the guy down for so long, and he can still do some stuff, but they have to keep him down and keep the guys off him. But other than that, those modes are okay. The one thing I will say that I really do miss is I do miss Rush. Like, I feel that Rush would be very well suited in this game. Rush and maybe some Obliteration, but given how they've ruined Obliteration, I really wouldn't hold my breath. Because the reason I say that is, even as far back as Battlefield 3, when they introduced custom servers, one thing I really enjoyed playing was 500% Operation Metro, which is basically infantry only Rush, and it turned the game, which should usually only be about 20 minutes, if the winners lose, at a certain stage, really turns into like hour-long tug of wars that I really thought was very, very interesting. And one of the things I liked about Battlefield 4 is that they introduced another infantry-only map called Operation Locker, and I liked playing Locker Metro. I know a lot of servers used to kick between Operation Locker and Operation Metro. I really, really like that, playing 500% between those two. And when the game started to die down, that was one of the sad things, that was one of the things I realized I was going to miss, was a lot of Operation Locker and Operation Metro. This game, I think, really kind of missed its shot to really bring up Locker and Metro, well, not necessarily bring back the maps, but certainly have a rush-based game type like that. And I really would have enjoyed playing that, especially when the whole server, they start selling out the servers or whatever. I really would enjoy playing 500%. I think that would be really, really good. But other than that, the multiplayer, I think, is really, really fun. I've really been enjoying myself playing it. I've been playing a ton of it. I've been getting back up to my divisions, getting really high on the division charts. And I really recommend it. It's more of a solo-based game. I don't know if you're going to be able to pull friends together because, to be honest, my friends are kind of, they don't like the game. Some of them aren't good at it, so they don't want to play it. But I will say that it is fun, especially if you could get maybe a squad of 2 or 3 people together. It will be tons of fun. But I can guarantee you, from my experience, that playing it solo is also rewarding in its own right. And I enjoy doing it, and I do it from time to time when I'm not too busy with my YouTube channel. It's kind of my guilty pleasure game, I guess I'll say. Well, not even guilty pleasure. It's just my multiplayer game for right now, which I've really been lacking one for quite some time. And yeah, now let's talk about the other half of the game. The other half of the game. And the one thing I forgot to mention, I know I mentioned it a little bit, is in this game you earn experience. You earn points that go towards your class or your weapon and stuff like that. But you also earn money, and with the money you earn, you can eventually, it accumulates. You can buy battle packs for 10 grand or 25 grand or 50 grand. You can also buy weapons, different attachments. You can also buy gear for your class. There's multiple loadouts right off the bat, which I think is a real blessing in disguise. I really like that there's multiple loadouts in this game, because it really helps, if you want to, say, play one map a certain way or play another map a different way, or you want to have different setups for different guns and you don't want to fumble around at the beginning of each match. I love that idea. It's great. It's ingenious. Thank you, Visceral, for doing that. Another thing that the money also allows you to do is, you can save it up. You can buy it on a ton of different stuff. You can buy really expensive items, which, the one thing I will say is that if you're going to try to start buying camouflage for your class once you hit gold on it, keep in mind that you're going to have to spend 100 grand or 250 depending on what you buy. you're going to have to spend that much per sub-faction, per class. So there's actually 4 different sub-factions in this game. There's the SWAT versus the robbers, I believe. No, excuse me, the thieves. And then there's the undercover agents versus the bangers, which are, a gang. You're going to have to buy it for each one of those 4. Just bear in mind. So what would be a simple $100,000 purchase turns into a $400,000 purchase. And if you want to have the Team Pride equipment, you're going to need to spend $1 million. So yeah, those double XP days are really going to be pretty important, I think. But the next thing I'll talk about is the campaign. The campaign of this game follows a police officer by the name of Nicholas Mendoza as he goes through and tries to bring his former cop allies to justice. Now, what I will say about this story is the story is very simple. It's pretty predictable, and it really doesn't strive too far. Of anything, it gets a pass just because, it's staple. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't push any envelopes, so it gets like a 6 out of 10, in general. But the one thing I will say about the story is that I love the narrative presentation of the actual story. I like the way that they present the story to you. Now, the general premise of the story is that they kind of want it to be like a cop drama. They kind of want it to be like you're sitting down, you're watching a cop thriller, which, at least in America, are all the rage or really used to be popular. Up until, I want to say a few years ago, then they kind of stopped being popular. I don't really know. It's too popular on TV right now. But the whole cop drama approach, I feel, really adds a nice taste to it. It's kind of like the lime wedge on top of a good drink. You know what I mean? It's really a good addition to Battlefield, which, to be honest, I think since the Bad Company era, the 2 Battlefield games that followed have been really kind of bland and boring and had really, paper-thin characters, and I thought that the campaigns, especially a Battlefield 4, was really kind of meh, looking back on it. Especially Battlefield 3, which really blatantly ripped the campaign architecture, the narrative presentation right from Black Ops, which I thought was, good because the Black Ops style was interesting, but they really didn't do much to hide the fact that they completely stole it. I like that this game really takes a completely different approach to it. I think that, the story certainly could have been much better, especially the ending, which I guess they kind of want to be a cliffhanger, but I don't know if they'll ever get that cliffhanger chance. Really could have had some more work, but the narrative story and, the way that the story is presented, I think, is really, really well done. I do like the fact, and now that's just the story element, the presentation, the 60 frames, the really good visuals, so the presentation aspect of it, just in general. The soundtrack, I think, is really good for this, especially at some missions. I think, like Mission 7 has a really good soundtrack. The one major thing, and getting into the gameplay of the campaign, that they added was, believe it or not, actually very similar to something from a game called Star Wars Bounty Hunter. The campaign features a very stealth-heavy aspect to it, to the point that most parts of the game can actually be stealthed through if you know what you're doing or if you know exactly how you're going to do it and plan it out. Now, it's not ridiculously difficult stealth, but it certainly requires a good amount of planning. It certainly requires a good amount of, distraction or whatnot. And I like that about this campaign. It's not just, your generic FPS, shoot 'em up, okay, you're in a new area. You basically, with most FPS games in the last, 10 years, I want to say, or, well, actually, what is it, 8 years at this point? You basically know what you're getting into. And really, I like that they put the stealth aspect into this game because it certainly helps break up the flow of the game. Sure, you can go through guns blazing, but you're not a bullet sponge. You're not a tank who can take 500 bullets and be perfectly fine. You actually still have to be somewhat tactical about engaging, which I like. But, you can distract enemies. You can arrest them, which basically incapacitates them. And you can then, lure their friends. You can do chain takedowns if you tell 2 or more people to freeze. In the early parts of the game, you can flash your badge to prevent them from running or, from shooting you back. Now, here's the thing. That doesn't work later on in the game, and I'm not saying it the enemies begin to get a little bit, more fearless. So approaching them from the front really doesn't work after a certain point, as approaching them from the side does. You have to get them from behind. So I do like that they do try to ramp up the difficulty, so you can't just walk up in front of two people and just be like, yo, freeze. No, they're going to shoot you at a later point. Also, they kind of borrow from Star Wars Bounty Hunter a warrant system. Basically, there are certain individuals in the campaign who are, they have warrants open for their arrest, and by arresting them, you actually get a big bonus, and you actually, get points towards an achievement. You can unlock new weapons and, get more collectibles and stuff if you arrest them and, if you take them down. I like that system because if you're actually going for the warrants, it means you have to play the level. First of all, you can't play the level, cut and dry as a shoot 'em up, because once you go into alert phase, you can never get out of it. The enemies will never, they're not like Metal Gear where they'll just be like, oh, okay, we can't find them. They actually stay on alert forever once you alert them. And I like that, because in Star Wars Bounty Hunter, that was certainly an interesting system. It meant that you had to do a lot of planning for the game and stuff. There's also evidence that you can collect that, leads to cases that actually pertain to the story, which is pretty cool, that they actually mean something to the story. They're not just completely unrelated. Kind of like LA Noire style evidence gathering. And the way that the evidence works is you get a scanner, which points you to the nearest evidence. You can scan it. There's plenty of hidden stuff to find that, with the scanner you can kind of, you can figure out where it is and, how to get to it. And ultimately, I really like that about this game. The campaign, I will say, at least maybe not story-wise, but definitely gameplay-wise, I want to say that this is one of the best first-person shooter campaigns I've played in quite some time. Probably in the whole 8 years of, first-person shooters being like the biggest thing on the market, this is probably one of the best gameplay campaigns I've ever played. Now, story could certainly be better. It could certainly have a lot more patching up. And even though the narrative is really well done, the actual matter at hand is really not that well done. But gameplay-wise, this campaign, I would say, is certainly a good portion of the game, and it makes Battlefield Hardline a worthwhile purchase, in my opinion. So what would I give Battlefield Hardline? I would give Battlefield Hardline an 89 out of 100. I was really impressed by the campaign, especially the gameplay of it. The multiplayer I'm really, really enjoying, even though I am by myself. When you do play it with friends, it becomes a whole lot more fun. And I really think that Battlefield Hardline is a good game. It has its faults. The lack of rush and obliteration and the bland, predictable story do take away from it. The unskippable cutscenes is a very big annoyance for the campaign. But I do like the fact that there is replayability in the campaign. I do like the fact that, the multiplayer has a fun, certainly a fun and unique aspect to it. I do like the infantry-based style of it, harkening a little bit more back to games like Counter-Strike and other games. More Call of Duty-esque, where you can't just let a vehicle do all the work for you. And I did enjoy it. So Battlefield Hardline, certainly well done by Visceral. I really enjoy their games. Visceral does put a lot of effort and a lot of work into their games. And one thing I will say is certainly be on the lookout for a lot of Dead Space Easter eggs. Visceral Games spared no expense putting in a lot of Dead Space Easter eggs, in both multiplayer and the campaign, which I think is utterly hilarious, and I think that they really wedged them in a nice way. Some of them are more obvious than others, but certainly, I really appreciate the effort that they put in. Just like Dead Space 1 and 2, I think Visceral has really made a good game this time around, and I'm going to look forward to playing it constantly throughout this year. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I want to say that I don't know what the next verdict will be. I will certainly see. But yeah, I hope this is somewhat informative for you guys. Maybe you'll check out the game. And I will see you guys later. So have a good one, and take care.